Hi guys, this is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you get anything from my work, a Connect Dot, an Epiphany, a Mind Explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. There's Odin, he's behind me. All the links are down in the description below this video. One eye looks larger than the other, and that's just the illusion of my eye makeup. Oh boy. Gotta love kitty cats. If you are so inclined to want to help me out and get an energetic exchange, skulls, floral skulls, gem skulls, pyramids, hearts, paintings, more pyramids, decor for your house. That's a welcome sign. Different types of pyramids. That's Freya. She likes my pyramids. She happens to hang out by them all the time. She loves the energy. So we can see her being cute in the background, playing with she likes the keychains. So hey, we got cuteness in the background. Today I'm gonna read the message of Aquaria. This eye thing is bothering me. A New Testament. It should be very interesting. A New Testament, I fixed it. Not my hair. That's horrible. Anywho, for quote, for as much as ye are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ, ministered by us, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God, not in tables of stone, but in fleshly tables of the heart, who also hath made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. End quote. 2 Corinthians. Principles and universal laws are eternal and invariable. Their interpretations are transient and variable. Creeds and dogmas, man's efforts to interpret and explain to the masses the mysteries of divine manifestation, appear in every age, serve their purpose, and pass away and are forgotten. But the principles and symbols which express them remain. Whenever a great body of mankind reaches a point where it has either outgrown the symbolic language used to interpret an inspired revelation given to a past generation, or when previous interpretations of eternal varieties have become encrusted with so much that is misconceived or false, or have become so materialized and literal that they no longer reveal the truths they were meant to teach, there is given to the world a new outpouring of truth, inspired by the same divine source of all truth, a New Testament for a new dispensation. And invariably, those giving forth the New Testament are regarded by those of the old dispensation as heretics and disturbers of people's minds. As the old Mosaic dispensation drew to a close, Jesus, the great avatar for the new dispensation, is represented as gathering his disciples together into an upper chamber and giving them what he designed as a New Testament. A new and fuller interpretation of the mystery of the divine sacrifice that was taught in the orthodox and conventional way in the synagogues. The Mosaic law gave to humanity 10 commandments revealed to Moses amid thunderings and lightnings, enumerating the things men should not do. The negative, thou shalt not, being the keynote of the admirations. Jesus gave to the world but two commandments. Aaron Abke talks about this, which he said contained all the law and the prophets. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind and with all thy strength. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, end quote. Pause. Pause, pause, pause. That's truth. Jesus only gave two laws, and that's the law of one. Bingo was his name-o. Aaron Abke talks about this. Please go check out his works. There's some stuff that I contest to his stuff, and there's other stuff he's spot effing on. And again, that's just interpretation and perception. I think he's a wonderful person and one that we should be listening to, especially if you're into the Bible. He contests the version of what you read in the Bible is Pauline, not Yeshua. The interpretation, what was just spoken about. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind and with all thy strength. Shouldn't that not also include yourself? And that is the mere principle of the law of one. Because now you're including thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So the first one, yes, you need to acknowledge Christ consciousness within yourself. That there's nothing outside of yourself. God's all within here. That's what Yeshua was alluding to. It's all in here. And to also entangle your thoughts to the creator of itself, all that is. All that is everything outside of yourself. So if you go in and love thyself, truly in your heart space, your mind and your soul, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, as the God that you are. What a fucking concept. But yet everybody needs the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not is a negative connotation. No, we should not kill. But how many people have killed in the name of Yeshua and God itself? People go on crusades. People take over lands. People put their negative polarity on humanity. If you broke those 10 commandments, and most of humans have, I didn't break Yeshua's because I love thyself. And I love all the other neighbors. That's everybody outside of myself. I love them too. Not just the people I prefer. I also love the people I don't prefer because they're showing me pathways of what I don't prefer, but I still love them anyway. Aaron Abke talks about this, and his work is absolutely important if you are somebody that studies the Bible and is very into the Bible. He goes into his struggle in his religion about this concept. And the Curtises nonetheless bring it up, and it's just like gleeful in my ears. Coffee. Because my hair looks like my day. No longer were the things man must not do enumerated, but the positive things he should do. For if we love with all our hearts, both God and our neighbor, We cannot kill, commit adultery, steal, bear false witness. The new commandments concern those things which we should do to be happy and live at peace with the world. This was the keynote of the New Testament given by Jesus. But because Jesus departed from the old negative teaching of the commandments, he was regarded as the greatest heretic of all his day. Was called the teacher of heresies and sedition, a stirrer up of the people and a dangerous man. And so has it ever been with those who present new ideas and new expression of old truths, whether in medicine, science, art, or religion. Pause again. Because we're here right now in this paradoxical paradigm of what me and Aaron and many others teach: neutrality. Susan Good McGillis, coming into neutrality, seeing beyond good and evil. Oh, but how can you do that? You live in duality because you aren't negating, you're not forgetting, you're not being blind to a side. You're looking at both sides objectively, weighing the pros and the cons of both sides, and then choosing what would be your betterment. It's not negating, it's not leaving out, it's not being blind to, it's seeing both pathways and which one holds the better pathway for you. And there is no wrong way, by the way. A lot of us are talking stuff that is very hard to handle. For most human beings, they need the dance of distortion, polarity, duality. They don't know any other way. They can't deprogram themselves to see beyond it because it's always been apparent and it's still playing out. It has to be tangibly seen by most people. But if you're really God understanding, you understand physics, you can understand that all is one. You are one with it all. And for you to go out and not give your Thanksgiving to the animal, to the vegetable, because you are plucking essence out of the earth, you have to give thanks for it. Not being a this or a that person, because all bodies, physical bodies, need different nutrients and different things because their chemical makeup is all different. Each and every one of us in this new pathway that we're creating together, this new consciousness, this ascension path of the Christ, is not an easy one. Many people look at me and others in my thought process as heretics. How could you say that you have to give love to the pedophiles or to the people that are destroying the earth? They know not. They lost their way. And if I don't model better behavior for them to follow or to model or to look up to, then what is our purpose? Are you striving to be the best that you can be? And there's so many people out there in the heretic land. Oh, that's some crazy talk. Wait, I mean, the conspiracy theorists had it right. Just took 6 months. Mhm. 6 months. Truth is like a great king's highway, built by the angels or messengers in the beginning, by the following of which man might return to his father's home. The spiritual highway extends throughout the world and has branches in every land. But as it is traveled by millions upon millions of age after age, it becomes worn and full of ruts. Those who think they know and those who are timid when they find there are steep hills to climb, gorges to pass through, and rivers to ford, put up sectarian signboards warning their followers to beware certain dangers, or telling them to conduct their journey in a particular manner and with certain observances. In many places, the oldest of these signs have fallen down or grown so dim that they cannot be deciphered. Other pilgrims, often knowing even less about the way, have tried to repair these signs, and in relettering them have changed their wording and caused confusion. Later on, these signs have been mistaken for original directions, by no means to be overlooked. Still others have built detours which they think would and will either shorten the journey, making it more pleasant, or will avoid what seem to be dangers ahead. These also in time have been considered by later pilgrims as part of the original highway. But when the road has become so narrow, so rough, and so confused by sectarian detours and mental ruts that travel is sadly impeded, the king sends forth his servants to repair, reconstruct, straighten, and widen the road. Each such repairing and resurfacing of the highway we call a New Testament, or restatement of the way, the truth, and the life. Oh boy. Jeez Louise. The new interpretation which Jesus presented to his disciples was that instead of the slaughter of animals and the literal shedding of their blood being used to symbolize the mystery of sacrifice, the New Testament should bring a deeper understanding of a world-old truth, which the slaughter of animals expressed in but a crude and materialized manner. He did not tear from them entirely the old beliefs in which they had dwelt so long, but he interpreted in a higher way the ideals which the materialized symbols indicated. He did not alter the eternal truth which the symbols sought to express, but he widened and deepened his disciples' comprehension of them and led them into a fuller understanding of the mystery. Following the same law, this order does not seek to tear down and destroy the old beliefs of its students, but to expand and illumine them so that they shall have a deeper, broader, and more comprehensive understanding of the mysteries back of the symbols, and hence of the many misconceptions current in regard to them. In other words, its teachings added to instead of take from. They are broadening and deepening, inclusive of others instead of exclusive, constructive instead of destructive. In the days of Jesus, as today, the mysteries could be grasped only by the few, only those who could enter the upper chamber of intuition and inspiration, where along the mysteries can be revealed, only those whose expansion of consciousness enabled them to grasp higher ideals, greater truths, only those who were ready to leave all and follow him, who were ready to leave all that literal, revolting, and unsatisfying teachings and follow the new and higher interpretation, which was to carry them one step beyond the old Mosaic idea as then presented by the slaughter of animals. And yet the slaughter of animals was a true symbol, and to the crude and materialistic understanding of the race by whom it was practiced was not wholly evil. It probably awakened in many minds a true understanding of what was symbolized, the sacrifice of the animal traits and appetites that the higher spiritual man might manifest. So in every age, certain customs and practices are not wholly to be condemned if they are the best the people of the age can conceive of as a round of the ladder of life on which they can rest their feet, understanding for a moment as they climb. The rule is that we should live up to the highest that our minds can conceive of and be true to our inner convictions, but condemn not other less developed souls who cannot see or understand as clearly as we. So it is today. These teachings will appeal only to those who are ready to turn from another literal blood sacrifice, this time not of animals, but of a man. A literal interpretation, what the New Testament of Jesus was never meant to teach, and grasp a still higher realization of the meaning of the mystery of sacrifice. Interesting there. The New Testament, which gave Jesus the what? Hang on, rewrite my brain. I'm tired. The New Testament, which Jesus gave, that makes better sense, was that while it what it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul, and without shedding of blood is no remission. Nevertheless, it is not possible that blood of bulls and goats should take away sins. What is the meaning of this paradox? What is the sacrifice and what is the blood that must atone? The sacrifice is indeed that of man, not Jesus, but the lower man, the animal self, the personality to the will of the divine. The blood is shed is indeed that of man, yet not the literal physical blood, but the spiritual life force. The physical blood is the carrier of the physical life force and is therefore used to symbolize the spiritual life force or the Christ force. Sorry, guys, or the blood of the Christ within man. This was symbolized in the old days by the blood of animals and in Jesus' time by the wine of the Eucharist. When Jesus said of the wine, "This is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins," he obviously referred not to his physical blood, which was not shed, but to the great sacrifice of the Christ force in man coming down into or being shed in the darkness of his outer life. The pouring out of the spiritual life force blood to redeem that which was lost or lacked spiritual life force. To symbolize this great mystery of sacrifice anew, Jesus took bread and wine instead of the body and blood of animals, and with these symbols summed up his whole life and teaching, namely, that it is not in vain that a man lay down his life for another, whether it be his friend and his country or the sacrificing of life of the lower man to the higher. The whole gospel story is focused in this idea. But as the centuries pass, we find that the finite tendency to misinterpret, limit, and materialize even the grandest symbols has again materialized the new symbols of the eternal sacrifice and redemption given by Jesus into the literal sacrifice of his physical body and the shedding of his physical blood. He is continually represented as a man of sorrow and acquainted with grief. Alas, how few can differentiate between the godlike acquaintance with an understanding of both sorrow and grief, which enable him to sympathize with and help mankind under all conditions, to differentiate between the part these experiences must play in man's evolution and the mere souled helplessness of a human victim to the vicissitudes of earthly existence. In holding this mental picture for ages, the church has lost sight of the glory of love, the strength, the courage, and the uplifting joy of one who willingly endured the sordid conditions of earth life, that he might leave footprints to show all who follow that those things could not touch or appall the soul. Instead of being regarded as a symbol of the descent of the Christ into the matter and the pouring forth the Christ force, the crucifixion has been so materialized and literally interpreted that it has been used as an excuse for negative submission to suffering and sorrow, so that in time self-torture was looked upon as doleful, continence was a mark of sanctity. Yet because back of this misinterpretation of the symbols, there was a divine truth Man realized within himself that there was something there which he could not grasp. As he grew spiritually and expanded intellectually, there were many who looked at the materialized idea and revolted at the thought of allowing another to suffer for their sins, especially as they were told that their perpetuation was made centuries before they were born. And being unable to accept the literal interpretation, they turned away from all religion and were lost either in a sloth of indifference or in a mental labyrinth of speculation, which brought neither peace nor satisfaction. The New Testament, given out through the order of Christian mystics, is an effort to show to all the truth back of the allegory that may again sit down at the Master's table and satisfy their spiritual hunger. In the mystic silence of the upper chamber, in the higher understanding of the everlasting truth of the mystery of sacrifice, the true disciples again today, as of old, are bidden by the Lord to sit at meat with him. And his disciples of today, he has given the task of preparing an upper chamber and of extending his invitation to whomsoever will come. Here they may recognize that it is the same Jesus who has come again, he whom they have seen taken out of their sight amidst the clouds of the higher criticism, the doubts of disappointment, Christendom, and the cynicisms of the world, whose body they have seen broken by the doctrinal warfare over the literal teachings which have divided his followers into many sects, whose life force, blood, has been wasted in dolorous practices of aestheticism by those who refuse to accept it in spirit and in truth and allow it to make them more virile, valiant, and joyous conquerors. This same Jesus has come again in like manner as they saw him go. He comes now with power and great glory and the light of spiritual understanding for his faithful ones. They saw him sadly depart from his houses of worship when emphasis was given to dogma rather than to spiritual understanding, when the world began to worship the symbol as a finite happening, when the minds of men were disturbed because the investigations of higher criticism threw doubt upon the literal actuality of the symbol as an event in physical history, when his followers sought him historically only to find an empty tomb with its grave clothes and cried out in bitter disappointment, "They have taken away my Lord, and we know not where they have laid him." Let them now listen to the answer of the angel. He is not here, for he is risen. Why seek ye the living among the dead? Never yet has the multitude answered that question, yet the answer is the New Testament given to this order to proclaim to this generation. We are not to look back and to worship a crucified, dead, and buried Jesus, but a risen and ever-present Lord of light, life, and love. Not a literal event past and gone ages ago, but a living presence who calls us to sup with him now in the upper chamber. When the world was young and thoughtless, it was perhaps wise to hide the deeper mysteries from the masses, who could not comprehend and might profane them. Yet the truth has always been known to the elect. Even today, in some branches of the church, a part of the sacrament of the Eucharist is withheld from the congregation. The wafer body alone is given to the people, while the wine, blood, is drunk by the priests. The hungry but unthinking and uninquisitive populace is fed with dry wafer and taught to bow in adoration before a dead and crucified Jesus, lest a personal realization of a risen and living Christ cause them to throw off the bonds of priestly subjugation. But the risen Lord now gives to the world a New Testament so that all who are hungry for spiritual food, who are tired of suffering, who are sick of bloodshed, may know the glorious truth of his living presence. As long as a literal blood sacrifice of one man or many is believed in as a proper propitiation, I'm totally butchering that word, by the way, for sin, man will never wake up to the belief that war can be abolished. For if the physical blood of one man could wipe away the sins of the world, why might not the blood of millions, shed for the high ideals on the battlefields, wipe away the sins of the nations? But this has not and never can accomplish. Far from it. So true. So true. As ambassadors of the risen and ever living Christ, we cry out to the world that the bread, body of teaching that is given you is bread indeed. It is filled with the wine of living truth. The great one has come to earth, not on a cross, but full of divine life, in a body which is animated by the spiritual lifeblood. To the open eye of spirit, he stands among you. Behold his power to accomplish hands, then nailed upon the cross of matter by the ignorance of the multitude, but now held out in power and blessings. Behold his understanding feet, then rendered helpless by the cruel nails of misunderstanding. But now, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, thy God reigneth. Behold his side, from whose wound flowed both water and blood. From it, the softening and nourishing water of mother love, mingled with blood of spiritual life force, still flows forth in a never ceasing stream until the redemption of man and the planet is accomplished. Indeed, it is to bring to you, to your consciousness, a realization of the presence, power, and accessibility of the stream of water and blood of divine love and spiritual life force. That is the reason for the New Testament of today. Each disciple who bathes in this stream bears witness that the Lord Jesus has not and will not leave the world comfortless, especially in these days of darkness and grief, but will always come again and again to each loving heart and to every age. And through those who can meet him in the upper chamber, bring to them a New Testament of love, inspiration, and life. Again, his voice echoes throughout the world. Behold, I bring you a New Testament. What is the New Testament for this generation? We proclaim that it is no longer animal bodies and clotted blood, no longer broken bread and wine poured out, bodies crucified and bloodshed, but body and blood united in the living form of the coming great one. Behold the man, the prophet, priest, and king, the Redeemer, the Savior. Another and perhaps more personal application of the New Testament given out today by the same Jesus through independent inspiration is that the disciples may be compared to the mind, for the intellectual faculties have to break up the bread of truth and give it forth to the hungry multitude, while the wine or blood may be likened to that inner spiritual life force, without which no matter how fine the intellect may break the mental bread, it remains mere husks, unable to satisfy the hunger of mankind. This phase of the symbology is also exemplified by man and wife. The true man corresponds to the nourishing bread of the outer body, which feeds the world with the intellectual presentation of truth. Yet, unless the bread has been kneaded with the feminine force or the spiritual water, which has been turned into wine by the Christ at the marriage feast, it cannot satisfy the spiritual hunger of the world. Again, the true man is the body which stands before the world and proclaims the teachings of the Christ. But unless the body is filled with rich, pure blood, it is but an anemic shadow of a real man. Verily, it is not good for man to be alone any more than it is good for him to feed on dry husks. Nor is woman her true self when she stands alone, For then she becomes but as water poured out upon a rock or blood shed in vain. And alas, how often women, unless sacrifice themselves without accomplishing their aim. It is, therefore, fitting that this movement, which heralds the New Testament for the new dispensation, should have as its agents both a man and a woman, body and blood. The blood is shed in vain if the Christ has not performed the first miracle at the wedding feast. Throughout Christendom, during the whole of the long dark night of the old dispensation, although both the body and blood have been symbolically partaken of in the bread and the wine, in true remembrance of him until he come again, and the adoration for the crucified Jesus has been religiously performed, the world has never yet found perfect satisfaction. Some have said that the blood has cleansed them from sin, and others have said that the bread has fed them. But there has always been a separation. The Christ has always been crucified, the body broken, and the blood spilled. If we are to enter upon the work of this new day and spread this New Testament in earnest, we must change this old idea, must teach mankind to gain realization of the living Christ as an actual reality, a power and force in their hearts and minds and lives. Then every eye that has pierced him shall behold him. Everyone who has emphasized the sorrow, suffering, and death of Jesus has pierced his body and shed his blood. Had more attention been given to the glorious promise of his resurrection and second coming, we would not need a New Testament to enable us to recognize the risen Lord, worship at his feet, and see in him not a crucified, but a living Christ. That's important. As the risen Lord comes close to earth, he must first come to his own. To those who now recognize, know, and love him, to them he will manifest and become the living spiritual force or blood animating their lives. These will slowly be gathered together one by one into the upper chamber, not because they belong to any church, society, or movement, but because their hearts, they have spiritually touched the robe of the Christ and have felt his virtue flow into them and through them in their environment. And his virtue, which is the lifeblood of the Christ, has filled their body, intellect, and illuminated it so that they no longer simply believe, because now they know and cannot be deceived. It is these who will be gathered into an upper chamber of the spiritual Jerusalem, the city of spiritual realization, which cometh down from heaven, yet cometh not with observation, but as an inward experience. Our ascension. Hi. We must obey the command, tarry ye in the city of Jerusalem until ye be endued with power from on high. For if we simply have intermittent spells of spiritual upliftment, when we realize that we are treading the golden streets of the New Jerusalem, we may not be there when he comes, but he has told us to tarry there or dwell continually in the city of the soul. Soul, that upper chamber of the Christ consciousness. This does not mean that we are not to neglect our duties in the outer life, but it does mean that we are to realize that while the body or outer form of our life, which includes our intellect, activates and conceptions of truth, is performing its works in the world, the blood of spiritual life force must flow in a steady stream through its veins direct from the river of life, which flows around the throne where dwells the Christ. Only when enough of those who have washed their robes, bodies, in the blood of the Lamb and made them white, have been gathered together into the upper chamber, can the great teacher and Lord appear to them on earth in a body apparently of flesh and blood. And herein lies a great mystery, for he can manifest physically only in the upper chamber, made of the living sacrifice of the emanations of his true disciples, those who have given up their lives not for his service, but to his service, all animated by the spiritual aspirations and ardent devotion of their hearts. which have been poured out for him in unselfish service for mankind, and all joined together with one heart and one mind in the Christ consciousness. The inner mystical meaning of the crucifixion is that just as the Christ manifested in the man's Jesus, he gave his spiritual blood to redeem the world. So at his second coming, his followers must follow the same example and allow Christ to animate them to the extent that they can pour out their spiritual life blood for him, that he may gather spiritualized physical atoms in which to appear. For only in a sanctuary or upper chamber, this built up and among those endured with power from on high, I saw that, can he be made visible to mortal eye. I have spared around. The upper chamber is a symbolic term meaning a place of worship sacredly set apart and consecrated to the divine, in which the worshiper rises in consciousness into the higher spiritual realms to meet his Lord. In the individual, the upper chamber would be the state of consciousness called the silence, or the state in which he realizes his oneness with the divine. In short, both the disciples and the individual, it might be called the temple of silence or the sanctuary. This New Testament brings to every heart a blessed privilege and sacred duty. The crucifixion is over, the resurrection completed, and he has come in like manner as ye saw him go, to appear first to Mary and then to his inner disciples, and then to the world. Who is Mary? The mother love, or the developed heart, which brings forth the Christ. Who are his inner principles? All who have made a sacrifice, a sacred shrine, an upper chamber in their hearts where he can enter. Those who are endued with power from on high. Those who feed daily upon him in their hearts, not in self-mortification and sorrow, but with joy and thanksgiving. This New Testament must bring about the absolutely new way of teaching the world. Hence, the order proclaims, even now in the wilderness of the world's darkest hour, just before the dawn, as did John the Baptist of old, repent ye, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Prepare ye the way of the Lord, make the path straight. Each one who reads his message and whose heart responds to these teachings is given the privilege of entering the upper chamber and drinking in the outpouring of the New Testament. It is then their blessed privilege and sacred duty to be a forerunner, one of the heralds of the new day, an exemplar of the New Testament. That the body is no longer pierced, broken, and dead, that the blood may be poured out, but that the true blood, the spiritual life force, which is indeed the life of the world, is to be found in the radiations of divine life from the coming one. That he has come to earth in a sacred and immaculate form, combining the physical elements of both flesh and blood, overshadowed by the consciousness and filled with divine life of the Father, Mother, God, conquering and to conquer, he writes forth, will you be of his train. I only made that face because holy shit, I talk about that train a lot. The next chapter is the mighty angel. Hang on. Okay, so this is like absolutely mind-blowing. This chapter, mind-blowing, because this is all I've been talking about. Validation beyond belief on all accounts. I don't necessarily believe Yeshua is going to be back in full form as an avatar, or anyone for that matter. I do believe that all of us in combination is the Christ risen, is the Christ consciousness, the unity consciousness that we're all developing and moving upward and forward with is Christ. It's an office that's held by many different cultures, religions, they put different names to it. Yeshua taught the law of one. In essence, a lot of the esoteric is the teachings of the law of one, just differentiated in wording and cultural differences. They're spot on. Spot on. And I highly recommend going to Aaron Abke, his channel on YouTube, and looking at his videos, especially on Paulian, uh, what that really, for his perspective, is the Bible is written in Paulian terms, and not the words of Yeshua. And scribes wrote it. So it's all interpretation. And what they were saying earlier in the chapter, that all is just a perception and interpretation that's been altered, inversed, watered down. It's like playing the game where you someone draws on your back and then you have to draw on someone else's back what you're feeling. And the interpretation is all wrong. The feeling is the same, but you're only getting what you're sensing and what you're interpreting out of it. And then you're drawing it on someone else's back. And the final picture is not what the first picture looks like in many cases. So this has been throughout history that people misinterpret the original meaning in depth. And of course, a lot of people will well intentioned, but others were not. And this is where we see the divisiveness, the judgments, the hate, and the spew of falsehoods upon humanity. And now we're finally starting to come back to the original law of one teachings, no matter who taught it. There's multiple entities, beings, societies, constructs that taught it, all differently, but the messages are the same. We are one with Source. Source is in all things. And when you could really walk it, breathe it, integrate it in your being, in essence, then you're going to stop hating, judging, and shaming, blaming other people, and you're just going to exude love unconditionally. You're going to have compassion for yourself. You're going to love thyself. That, therefore, you're loving Christ and you're loving God. Is things in your outworld going to be perfect? No, mine isn't. But that's what we wrote for ourselves to have experience. So God can have an experience of itself. And mine just happens to be a harder road to travel. But still a beautiful journey, even though I'm in the midst of thankfully having already white hair. So guys, amazing. Amazing. I'm going to probably have to reread that again. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shelter. Be the lighthouse. Seed your truths. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Sorry for a lot of the pausing. You're going to see a lot of that. Coughing, clearing throat. It's just really annoying on the audio. So I do apologize for all of that. I'm also in a lot of pain and having a hard time today. As you can see, I look like a shit show. But one of the best chapter. I mean, I get this. These authors just blow my mind. And I hope they're blowing your mind too. And I hope you apply the teachings that they are giving because it's worth it. And until the next one, guys, see you on the next one. Bye for now.